Right. We are live, so thank God. Guys, I'm just looking at the way StreamYard does it. Sometimes it gives me funny messages, but I am so excited to be here with Oleg Lougheed. Hey, Oleg, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I am well. I'm thrilled to be talking with you. I think you have a great story. I love the fact that you talk about adversity and the title of the show, Overcoming Odds. I mean, whatever we're going to be talking about, I know people are going to take nuggets from. So let's start with background story, though, so we can get to know you. Tell us a little bit about you.
Where do you begin, right? For me, where I'm at right now is a very, I guess you could say, distant place from where I was born into. And that is currently I reside in Austin, Texas. But as you might have been able to tell by my first name, I was not born in this country. I was born in Russia. I was born in a town called Chubarkul, which is in the direction of Kazakhstan, if my geography is still correct and things haven't changed. But I was born in that town, and when it comes to the show and the particular episode that you and I were going to discuss of overcoming the odds and the obstacles that are placed within our path, that's what my beginning was. It was full of obstacles. It was full of different adversities of not knowing where your next meal is going to come from, where you're going to sleep at a particular moment of your life, and what it meant to actually live without a set of parents who were there to support you and encourage you and bring you inspiration to help you move forward within your journey and your own individual story. What I've learned throughout my experience is this. First is nothing is more permanent than you make it to be. When it comes to adversity, when it comes to the different challenges that I faced in my life, the trauma that I've carried with each one of those events comes with a question. And that question being, how long am I going to let the trauma be a part of my life? How long am I going to carry it as part of my story? And when I begin to get curious about my elements and my experiences of that past, I've also understood that I have the power of choice to reframe those elements, that it doesn't have to be seen through the lens that a 9-year-old or 7 or a 12-year-old Oleg saw it, that it could be something else, that there could be a developed perspective later on in life through which I can look at trauma from a different lens.
Right.
And the whole reason why I share this is because when I look at my life and I look at the number of transitions I had to make during the first 12 years, and then being adopted at the age of 12 and coming here to the States, not knowing any English, or let me put it this way, the words that I did know were very difficult to have a conversation around because you can only say so much about dog, tomato, and some of the other words that I had memorized. And what I learned was that coming to the States brought a different set of challenges. And oftentimes, in my opinion, adoption was viewed as this kind of end of the road, end to all the problems, all the adversities. But in reality, especially in my case, yes, it might have been an opportunity to a new beginning, but that opportunity to a new beginning came with its own set of challenges. So learning the new language, learning a new culture, learning how to make friends in situations where you don't even know how to speak their language. We're all challenged.
Let me ask you something. Do you remember being excited about being adopted? Like, what was your at that age, were you feeling it, or was it? I'm always curious. My wife's adopted. She was adopted as a baby. You're adopted as a
12-year-old.
12. So you are formed pretty much. A lot of you is formed, and you're about to go into puberty, and so we are thinking all these things, I can imagine. But were you excited to be adopted, and were you excited to come to the States to be adopted?
I would say yes, I was excited, but that's not to say that I didn't have any fear or uncertainty that came with it. And part of it came with the fact that I was entering into a world that was completely unknown to me. So my only understanding of United States at the time was that United States is dreamland and Michael Jordan. Those were the two biggest things that I knew about this part of the world.
Understood.
And so when I came here, the challenges, or one of the reasons why the challenges were so great, was because I was constantly stepping into the unknown. In addition, everything was accelerated. So being thrown into sixth grade, in my opinion, after having gone through the entire education system, is you're not actually in sixth grade. You're preparing for eighth grade. When you get into eighth grade, you're already thinking about your last year of high school. Right. When you get into high school, you're already thinking about college. And when you enter college, the conversation becomes, what do you want to be in life? And those are all very difficult questions to answer, especially in situations where you don't even know where you're at the particular time and place of your life.
So how did you overcome? What was there something that you decided in your life and you said, all right, I'm going to do this differently based on my experiences, or were there mentors? How did it transpire for you?
So for me, I think the best way that I could put this is that the whole concept of overcoming, I think it's a never-ending journey. I personally don't believe there's a point where you come to and it's just like, boom, you get it, what life is about. And that's one of the reasons why I think that in my opinion, the question of what is life, probably one of the hardest questions to answer, because there could be so many different answers to it. So I think when it comes to adversity, what I chose to look at is how can I continue to overcome the different challenges? And the things that have played a role in my life were definitely mentors. My sixth grade teacher was one of the first ones that actually helped me not only immerse into the culture, but believed in me so much, probably believed in me in areas that I didn't even know existed at the time. And he instilled that within me from that very young age, which I've carried since every single day. I remember my ninth grade teacher. She stood up in the middle of the English class and she said, there's no such thing as a stupid question. 10 years later, I finally learned that lesson. And I understood that I have the permission to ask whatever questions that I genuinely want to know answers to. That this whole journey of overcoming the obstacles, a large portion of it depends on your curiosity and the desire and the willingness to know that whatever you were born into doesn't have to be the final chapter of your life. Whatever storm you're going through right now, it doesn't have to be a permanent thing that happens. And so for me, I think what I've learned is really just the power of reframing and looking at all these adversities and choosing to ask myself the question of, what am I here to learn? How is this serving me? And how can I use all of these insights and experiences to move forward with that story and this newly developed narrative to serve other people? One other thing that I've learned, which I think may resonate with a lot of the listeners of your show, is this concept of purpose. I'm a huge believer that one of the ways that I was able to develop purpose is through service of others. I think there's something unique when you serve other people that you see about yourself that you aren't able to see through other forms of action. When you are genuinely there to give and to help that person in whatever way that's possible, there is an element of your character that gets revealed that I haven't seen be revealed through other forms of action. Yeah. And so I think in serving others, you find whatever it is that's inside of you, whatever that fuel, whatever that motivation may be. And that's what I'll pass on to other people, is that I'm not here to give you tips and tricks to life, because those are completely individual and customized to your own journey. But for those that might be challenged in finding that purpose or finding that meaning, service played a tremendous role in mine. So maybe serving from the perspective of, hey, I don't know what I don't know, but I may find it through the service of others, was a great step for me.
Where did the service, the servant leadership, the servant's heart come from? Do you feel like you were born like that, or did you learn it along the way? Because obviously service is very important to you. I 1,000% agree with everything that you said, but I always wonder where that came from. Was it fire within, or did you have to learn?
I think it was a combination of both. I think there were elements within me that have allowed me to understand that service is going to be a big component of my life. The other element, and that is meeting other people along the way, has helped me refine how I can serve others. So in seeing the small acts of kindness, in seeing the thank you cards at the end of every conversation you have, in seeing the moments where you'll be holding a door for someone and not expecting anything in return, or paying someone's bill at a grocery store. I don't do that often. I think I've only done that once, and not a full bill either, full disclosure. But it's those things, and it's seeing that, and that's where I think I'm naturally gravitated towards it, because it inspires me to be better. It's one of those things, in my opinion, where you know something, and it's so difficult to unlearn that thing or not know it, where you actually just self-inspire yourself into action. So I think it's a two-way street. I think I was definitely born with components of it. And then throughout time, I was fortunate enough to meet people of all kinds of experiences that have helped me shape my way and my view on service, and help me understand that, hey, this is something that I gravitate towards, this one not so much. So I'm going to make the choice and act more on this one, and know that over time, those things get refined. I mean, whatever I knew 5 years ago are different. Completely different, right? From what I know now. Mm-hmm.
What do you want to do next? What do you want to do? I don't do much research, but you appear to be a relatively young man.
Mm-hmm.
And so what do you want to do with this long term? Even in like the next year or two, what do you want to do? What's your long range goal?
My long range goal is to create a space with 3 very basic things at the core of it. An opportunity for people to be seen, to be heard, and to be appreciated. How I aspire to do that is by creating a space where people can share their story in different ways. So whether it's a written form, whether it's a form of interviews, live engagements, conversations, whatever it may be. And the reason why is because I believe there is no one shoe that fits all. So me coming to you and saying, hey, this is the only way for you to express your story through a blog post may not be the best way for you to share that story and ultimately put you into action in discovering more about yourself. So what I've learned and what has had an impact on me was when I was exposed to all of these different variables, the podcast, the short videos, the written form, and every single one of them played such a big impact on me that I want to be able to include as many elements of that as I can. And the reason why I want to create this space and helping people recognize the power of their story is I believe story guides everything, in my opinion. I think whatever the story that you tell yourself internally, when it comes to I can do this or I can't do that, it's all based on a story that you tell internally. And I think if you shift that narrative inside of you and you start believing more in the possibilities rather than the probabilities of life, the job that you hold, the income that you make, that's not the final chapter. You can change those things. And that's what I began to realize was once I understood the power of my own individual story, I began to put myself in positions where I wanted to share that with people, with other people.
Sure.
You know, when it comes to metrics or the number of people, I think that's a difficult question to answer because I don't think there's actually a way of knowing who you're going to impact or when it's going to impact them. Some of the things that I've watched to date have been published 20 years ago. Think and Grow Rich was written, I don't know what date, but it was a while ago. And it impacted my life 2 or 3 years ago to a point where I finally understood that you can actually, quote unquote, think and grow rich from those thoughts. That it's not all about financial wealth or accumulation of it. So my long-term goal is to create a space where people can recognize those things about themselves and also recognize the power of their individual narratives.
And what would you think what's the first step? If somebody's listening, as we start to wrap up, if somebody's listening and they're like, all right, I really like what Oleg is saying. I get it. I think it's cool, but I have no idea how to take that first step. What advice would you give them?
Well, the advice that I would give them is around the question that I had to ask myself. when I first started this journey of choosing to serve others through this platform called Overcoming Odds. And the question that I was faced with was, why me? I think that's a question many of us ask. Why you? Why were you the one that had to go through the adversity that you have? What I've learned was that if not you, then who else? And that's what I'd like to share with those that are listening to the show. In asking yourself the question of why you? Why you going through the divorce? Why you going through the bankruptcy? Why you going through all these other obstacles in life? But why not you? Why not you? Because you have a completely different perspective for how you've dealt with X, Y, and Z. And why can't you be the one that is there to serve other people and share your insights in a way that can inspire thoughts and actions within those that are surrounding you?
Excellent. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of words of wisdom from me. I'm going to share this because I mentioned it earlier. When I say you are a relatively young man, I just feel like you have an old soul. So I love the insights. I think they're great insights for people to be either reminded of, or first timers. You guys have to take that leap. You have to figure out how to overcome. And like Oleg mentioned before, you have to figure out how you're going to write your narrative. Mm-hmm. And you have control of it. And I think a lot of people don't realize that they are in control of it. Nobody's saying it's an easy thing to do. Oleg didn't say that. There's adversity, right? So that's a word that's in there. So you have to figure out what you're going to do with it, how you're going to live your life having had that experience, whatever that is. It's different for me than it is with Oleg, and it's different for you, but you have to take that first step. And so I love the fact that you are creating a platform where people feel good about sharing that and sharing their story and their journey, because that's what we all want, right? Mm-hmm. I think most of us want to be heard. We want people to sort of at least understand a little bit where we come from. And mm-hmm. I love that you incorporated adversity and odds, because we all go through it. And anybody who says they haven't, they're not being honest. Mm-hmm. I think you have to deal with it first, and you've obviously done an amazing job. All right, so tell me, what's the best way for people to reach out to you? How can they learn more about Overcoming Odds? How can they talk to you, engage with you? What's the best way?
The best way that people can do it is through our website, and that is overcomingodds.today. Through it, you'll be able to find different ways that you can engage in sharing your own story, listening to podcasts such as this one that interviews different people of different backgrounds who have dealt or are currently dealing with certain adversities in their lives. And that's one of the things that you mentioned that's important to note, is that this concept of overcoming odds or facing adversity, it's not a one-time thing that's going to happen in your life. Right. I mean, let's face it, I think the more you step into the unknown and the more that you choose to grow, you're going to face adversity probably every single day. In fact, multiple of it. I sure do. Let me put it that way.
Agreed.
And that's the thing about life, is that it's about finding ways to work through those. And so for anyone that's looking to be in a space like that amongst other people and understand that you're not alone along this process, that there's a community of others who have gone or are currently going through those things. And so website is probably the best way that people can get in touch. But beyond that, if you're looking to connect with me personally, I would say LinkedIn is the route that is best.
Yes, you're very accessible. So go to LinkedIn, Oleg Lougheed, mm-hmm. and overcomingodds.today. I love that .today. That's the first time I had seen that. So I love that there are different things, because .com just doesn't matter anymore. You can have anything you want. I love what you're doing, and I want you to come back at some point, give us an update. Thank you for sharing your words of wisdom. It was really awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
All right. And there's some love here on Facebook and LinkedIn. So I will respond. Lily, thank you very much. But I know Oleg is primarily a LinkedIn guy, so reach out to him. Cynthia, thank you so much. You guys have a great one. Thanks, Oleg, again for taking time out. I appreciate it from the heart very much. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys.
Appreciate it.
See you later. Take care.